All right, what's up, guys? Today we're going to be filling out the March Madness 2026 bracket. I have along a friend. His name is Kirby. He's over on Discord. Yeah, we're going to be looking at each region and breaking down specific team analysis, going over our favorite upsets that we like to take, and yeah, ultimately just filling out the bracket for you guys. Today we are going to specifically start and focus on the East region, and in future videos, we will be moving into the other regions and ultimately our Final Four and championship team. So, nevertheless, let's begin with the East region. And Kirby, you can introduce yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, no, there's so much to know about college basketball, and I think that's what really makes March Madness special is that there's so many things that you can look at. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
opinions that you can have, and I think that's kind of why we're here because I like to pick a team based on my heart. Like I can look at some statistics and I
Totally.
have a lot of fun doing that. Like I pick things based on my heart and I will stick to that opinion like no matter what. And Deacon here, he does like to be a lot more analytical,
Yep.
kind of I like to make some hot takes and I think that's what we're here to do today.
Totally.
But Deacon kind of grounds me in reality a lot of times. I'll text him just out of the blue, just a take that I have. He'll bring out just so many things that I had no idea about and you know, stop me.
Yep.
And that's why I don't gamble
Yeah.
because I would lose
Exactly.
so much money.
Yes. So yeah, like Kirby said, we're gonna be just kind of contradicting each other here. I'm a lot more analytical and statistical based, and Kirby's just a feel guy, which makes it perfect to fill out a bracket together, as we'll get a nice clean mix of that. So yeah, I feel like let's begin. Obviously, we got the first 116 matchup here with Duke versus Siena. Probably not a whole lot to look into here. Obviously, the Duke Blue Devils are an elite team, probably the
Yeah.
most picked champion this year. They have an insane resume of top teams that they have consistently been able to take down. Obviously, you have the ACC tournament winner, and yeah, I don't know. I don't even think we had to bother with this one a whole lot. I don't think Siena has hardly any chance to win this game. Um, I just don't think it is even worth bringing up the argument that Siena will beat the Duke Blue Devils in the first round.
Yeah, their current odds to win are 0.
Yeah. Yep.
They're that low. I want to give Sienna their credit. They have made the tournament. It's just one team is going to have to face Duke.
The Duke Blue
One team is
Devils.
going to be that last person in. They get that auto bid. They've won their tournament. They deserve to be here, but Duke is just
Unfortunately, Duke is an elite team, and yeah, they're not going to lose this game. If, in all honesty,
I'm not scared of hot takes. I'm not scared. I'm not just gonna sit here and be chalk the entire time. And I think you're gonna see that. But there's just too much to love about this Duke team here. And I
totally.
think they can honestly probably still sit in Gungba for this game. I
Oh,
think that's something that we're gonna have to talk about
yep.
in these later games
Yeah, we'll have to
is
talk about that when they get to the next weekend and see where they're at with their injuries.
is Foster being out and Gungba, still being a little bit banged up from the tournament. I don't think that's gonna present the problem just yet.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on, we have the next game, an interesting 8-9 matchup, the first game of the tournament. We have the 9 seed TCU Horned Frogs versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. Very interesting game
Yeah.
here. I feel like a lot of people are high on Ohio State. Um, yeah, I don't know, Kirby. What are your thoughts on this game?
And we've talked about this where filled out a couple brackets up to this point. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that that's something that we need to hide. But you have chosen Ohio State in every single bracket. I have chosen TCU in
Yes.
every single bracket.
Interesting.
I just TCU is one of the best turnover defenses in the entire league, and I think that's what you need to do against a team as hot as Ohio State. And I don't think that we can forget how hot TCU has been. Like,
Yeah.
and TCU is just this they're such an all around team. There's not one specific guy that you can look at, and that kind of shies some people away. They don't have a Bruce Thornton on their team, but like David Punch can do so much, and just all every person on their team chips in. I think almost all of them have in points per game, like their entire starting five.
Yep. Yeah, interesting here on the ESPN analysis. They have won 9 of their last 11 games and have 8 players that average 8 or more points. Like you said,
Mm,
David Punch, a sophomore forward, like leads this team in points per game. They have Edmonds as well, and also Brock Harding from the Iowa Hawkeyes, all who average more than 8 points,
yes.
which is very interesting. But also on the other side, you have Bruce Thornton and the Buckeyes, who are finally due for some tournament success after struggling for a long time. I don't know how are we feeling like we're gonna decide this game, because obviously we kind of are contradicting ourselves here. I really like the odds that Ohio State can finally get their tournament success.
Hmm.
But like you said, you like the TCU Horned Frogs and their consistency and depth on defense. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and
I
their
don't know. What are we
defense
feeling
is
like?
just like it's gonna. I think this is gonna be an amazing game. What a great way to start
Hmm.
March. But just and I'm completely open to whatever you think. And obviously, I haven't looked into these stats as much, but looking into it, TCU's defense is good. Like their TCU is gonna win the rebound game. They 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 win they win their turnover game. Like their TCU forces the other team to turn the ball over. They get the rebounds. They're blocking shots, and their assist to turnover ratio is actually even, just because which is interesting actually,
Hmm.
that these teams have the exact same assist to turnover ratio,
That is
but
interesting.
that's in the games they've played. Like I think that TCU is gonna make Ohio State uncomfortable in this game, but I will agree with you just how hot and due Ohio State is.
Yeah,
Like that's nothing that I'm gonna ignore.
yeah.
It's just
You finished there.
yeah, the rebound battles, and I think turnovers are so important in a game as matched up as this, but Ohio State can just shoot the ball better.
Yeah. One
It's just
thing.
which one are you gonna value more?
Yeah, one thing I'm seeing here as I look over at Evan Maya's website and just the overall KenPom website, I do see that Ohio State is higher in both with a very high adjusted offensive efficiency. Um, Looking over at KenPom, we have Ohio State with the 17th best offense in the country with the 54th best defense. And in comparison, TCU has the 81st best offense. So they don't score at a high rate, but also the 22nd best defense to slow down the Buckeyes and their high level scoring. So kind of different there, both ends of the spectrum. I can see it going either way. Obviously, it kind of just comes down to like who do we want to take?
Yeah, and I have these takes and such, but I am willing to go with your statistics every once in a while, and I think this is really just a coin flip game. Like we are starting the tournament on a banger with
Absolutely.
this one. I don't know. I, I'm a defensive guy. I love these stout defenses, but if you think that these offenses, like if you think that Ohio State is just going to be that much hotter than TCU, I have no problem taking them in this matchup.
Yeah, I think in this scenario, I think we should stick behind Ohio State and their veteran guard Bruce Thornton. Um, but obviously, like that can easily turn around and bite me in the butt later. But for the sake of the video, I do think statistically Ohio State is the best team here. But obviously, it's March. Anything can happen. It can go either way. It just all comes
Better of
down
the
to
two.
Which
But
which one?
I talk
Yeah.
about these defenses. Ohio State did just have that game against Michigan, one of the best defenses in the country, where they got to their spots. They hit their shots, and I think at that specific game so recently will give me some confidence to go your route.
Okay. Perfect. Now next, interesting 5-12 matchup here. We have the UNI Panthers and the St. John's Red Storm. Obviously, the Johnnies are a team that a lot of people are talking about to even make a Final Four run, which is very interesting here. They just knocked off
Yeah.
the Yukon Huskies. Obviously, interestingly enough, they are the conference tournament champions and the regular season conference tournament champions. So the
Over
Yukon
UConn.
or the St. John, the Johnnies are nothing to take lightly here under Zuby Ejiofor. But also, you have the very slow paced, methodical Panthers that can even try to slow down this hot offense and high level team.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. This adjusted pace
Mm-hmm.
is one of the highest things that you can look at to be like for upsets. If you're looking for an upset, slow team versus a fast team, that's that's where you want to look. And
Totally.
St. John's is kind of midway on the faster side, and Northern Iowa is so far on the slow side. Like they're one of the slowest teams in the country. So this is one of those situations where the Johnnies can get very uncomfortable based on Northern Iowa's play style. But I'm not gonna lie, Deacon. I haven't really looked at this at all. I've blindly picked St. John's every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And the people have too. Looking at statistics, this is the least commonly picked 5-12 upset in this tournament.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because, like, what are you doing to pick against Rick Pitino and Ejiofor? Like
Exactly.
they have the experience. A lot of people, including myself, think that they're seated too highly. They should be a 3 or 4, really. Like this
Totally.
is
For sure.
this is insane. People have talked about it. This East region is stacked with these names. These teams with this long record of winning that just know how to do it. They have these great coaches. They have these great players. They have this great history. This region is stacked with those types of teams, and I just don't think that there's a way that Northern Iowa can can get it done.
No,
Honestly.
I don't think so either. The Johnny's defense, believe it or not, is actually rated 12th, and UNI's is
Hmm.
24th. And crazily, UNI's offense is 153rd, and the Johnny's is, let me find it again, 44th. So the Johnnies are just dominating them in both metrics. Even like we talked about how UNI was able to shut down the Missouri Valley Conference with their defense. The St. John's
Yeah.
statistically is still a lot better than theirs. So I don't think we can go Northern Iowa here. I think we have to rock with the Johnnies into the round of 32.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I love teams that are hot. UNI is so hot right now. They just took over Arch Madness. A lot of people, including myself, believe that they realistically stole this bid, but they are so hot. They showed that they
Mm-hmm.
deserve it. But just a defense like what the Johnnies have is just gonna kind of choke out a team that tries to play as
Yep,
slow as Northern
I
Iowa
think so
does.
too.
It's
Like,
just will they be able to hit those big shots
yep,
at the end of the shot clock like teams that play this slow rely heavily on?
yep, yep. I totally agree. So now moving on, we have a interesting offensive powerhouse here. We have Darren Peterson versus Dominique Daniels in an interesting 4-13 matchup between Cal Baptist and the Kansas Jayhawks. Dominic Daniels is not a man to take lightly. He averages 23 points per game, almost 4 assists, or 4 rebounds per game, and also 3 assists per game. Um,
Mhm.
Standout guard for the Cal Baptist Lancers. Do they have what it takes to beat the Kansas Jayhawks?
Yeah, and that's what we really have to look for. And obviously, you have watched a lot more of these mid-major games than I have. The people aren't going to know this, but you love staying up late, playing games on your phone, and just placing bets on these mid-major teams and watching them all night long.
Totally.
And so you obviously know a lot more about this than I do. But I think the biggest thing we're going to have to look at here in this first round is experience within the tournament. This is Cal Baptist's first dance.
Yes.
Okay. And Kansas, it's they're here every year. They are experienced,
Yep.
the program knows what it has to do. They have what it takes. And my personal opinion is that this is where Darren Peterson is going to show up. This is where
Absolutely.
Darren Peterson is going to show people that he deserves that number one overall pick. I personally think that his play style or lack thereof has been from some issues that have not been made public. Really do believe in Darren Peterson within this tournament, and I think that they are just too much for Cal Baptist in their first dance ever.
Absolutely. I'm not even gonna argue with you. I'm gonna agree and move straight on. Yeah, I think under Bill Self, this Kansas team is not gonna be one to take lightly in the tournament. I feel like Darren Peterson is overhated for the injuries that and struggles that he has faced. Maybe in the middle of the season, maybe that slow stretch there for them. I think the Jayhawks move on smoothly and silence all the Cal Baptist Lancers pickers. Now,
Yes.
interesting 6-11 matchup here. We have Louisville versus USF, and I believe that this is one of the most picked 6-11 upsets. Maybe down in the South, we have VCU over North Carolina. Um,
And
yeah,
the thing is that you say that this is one of the most picked ones, but it's hard to know because we don't get those statistics because we don't know who the 11 seeds are on that right half of the bracket. So we only get the statistics on the Louisville USF game and the North Carolina VCU game, which are both very popular upsets to pick, and I am part of that majority.
yep,
I am part of that group of people who love both these teams. Obviously, you and I both love some Ryan Hammer, okay? And just he has spent so much time on this South Florida team. He has so much belief, and Louisville had has had some hiccups to end this season.
absolutely.
Mikel Brown has wasn't playing in their tournament. It's like, are they going to get back? You look at these games, and every time I'm looking at these notable results that ESPN has,
Yep, me too.
and I was not going to tell the full story, but you look at these games, they play these big teams, and they lose pretty badly.
Yeah,
It's like, do they have what it takes to actually win in March? Like, obviously, they have that win over Indiana, but that's Indiana. They have the win over Kentucky, which I like this Kentucky squad, so that is one of the more impressive things on their thing. And they have this beatdown over NC State, but like NC State is a team that has barely made the tournament this year. Like they're playing in this year,
yep,
so like, and I think that this USF team has what it takes. Honestly,
yeah.
I love them in this tournament.
I don't hate it at all, and I feel like analyzing where these matchups are played, I think this favors USF if I'm not mistaken. Um, One thing to take in note, I think they have won around 11 or 12 games in a row, leading them to this point.
Yes.
And looking at the analysis, they have five guys averaging over 11 points per game.
Yes, and that's
So
one of the things about this team is they are so consistent.
yes,
They are
obviously
so consistent.
they rely on their starters, but also have a top 60 defense and offensive efficiency. Um, their guys that they play are great. Um,
Hmm.
Obviously, you see a close game against uh, Oklahoma State. Maybe a bad loss on the road to VCU. I don't know how bad that really is in the long term. But they're facing a banged up Louisville roster. And I don't hate it at all. Obviously, The 6-11 upset is a common one picked. I like South Florida to get this one done.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. USF is hot right now. They showed out in their conference tournament. You look at the stats, and these teams, like obviously their strength of schedule is going to be a lot different, but these teams are very similar statistic wise. But I think that the main issue for this USF team in this tournament is going to be their depth and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they rely so heavily on their starters. But that doesn't really matter in the first game. This first
Absolutely.
game,
Everyone's
that's
fresh.
only going to come back. It's going to come back to bite them in round of 32, Sweet 16. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
have to talk about them there. But I think that these guys have it done or have what it takes to get it done in this first round. They have some great guards that can rain down the threes on you. I think that they can take over this game.
Totally. Yep. I'd agree completely. So now moving on, we have the Michigan State Spartans and the North Dakota State Bison in a 3-14 matchup. Looking at the pick rate on ESPN, we do not hardly see any people picking the Bison to win this game, and I almost would agree. I feel like Michigan State has the roster, has the team to get it done. Obviously, you see an interesting loss to the UCLA Bruins in their conference tournament. Granted, I don't take that too harshly because the UCLA Bruins are hot under guard Donovan Dent. Um, I don't think North Dakota State will win this game. I feel like even looking at the odds and just trusting my heart, I don't see an upset here. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, no, I this one is one of the ones where I agree with basically everything you said there. And it is you almost wonder with the statistics of who's picking these teams if there's a one seed upset or a two seed upset that is more popular
Mm-hmm.
to pick
Yeah,
than this specific one. Just because,
could be.
and I've talked to you, these teams, everybody's seeded one, two, three, and most of the four seeds. They are so similar. The margins are so thin this year
Very
that
true.
this team could have easily been a two seed. I think it was just some hiccups late in the season to some great teams that caught, and obviously that loss to UCLA that you pointed out that caused them to dip down to this three seed. And we'll talk about UCLA uh, in our next pick, but they're a team that's hot. You cannot blame this Michigan State team
Mm-mm.
for losing to them. I think Jeremy Fears is just so good and is just gonna I think he just has what it takes to win in March.
Yep.
A lot of times, especially in like these low seed versus high seed games, kind of just look at the star players. You know,
Totally.
a team like Michigan State against NDSU, not to say anything about NDSU, but these higher seeded teams are going to have the most trouble stopping a superstar like Jeremy Fears. And I
Totally.
think he is the reason that Michigan State will take over this game.
Yep. And we can't forget Izzo is a legacy coach here. Knows the game of
Exactly.
basketball to a high level, and I do not think he will let his Michigan State Spartans to get upset in the first round either.
Yes. Yes. And just they're too well balanced to
Absolutely.
lose in this first round.
Absolutely. Okay. 7-10 matchup here. We got the UCLA Bruins versus the UCF Knights. Interesting Big 12 versus Big 10 matchup here. Um, Looks like the odds are in favor of UCLA. Personally, I would agree. I love Donovan Dent and his playstyle and his leadership as a guard. Um, Obviously, they got hot in their conference tournament here recently. Um,
Yes.
they have some notable wins against Purdue and the Michigan State Spartans, and also Illinois. Here, I think they do have what it takes to get this done, but you can never discredit a UCF team as well. Um, Very consistent Big 12 team here. They have wins over the Kansas Jayhawks, BYU Cougars, and the Texas Tech Raiders. But I do personally like UCLA in this matchup. I feel like they have what it takes to get it done. But you tell me what you think.
No, I really like this UCLA team. And I'm a big Big 12 guy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the teams in the Big 12 have all struggled in conference play just because of how good the Big 12 is top to bottom. And
Absolutely.
so, but obviously the Big 10 is nothing to sneeze at either. I think these are the two premier conferences in college basketball at the moment. I think you brought up their schedules. I think they have very similar schedules where they just have and beaten down
Totally.
by these powerhouses at the top of their conferences. And
Absolutely.
it's nothing to blame either of these teams on, but I think that UCLA showing that they can beat these powerhouses. They when they're in an isolated scenario with just the powerhouses, they won games. They obviously beat Michigan State, who we were just fawning over. They can win these games. Like it doesn't. I love this tournament just because you can see these teams who have gotten kind of suffocated by the conferences that they're in. These middle
Yeah.
of the road Big 10, middle of the road Big 12 teams that have gotten suffocated by the teams above them that now can have a chance to shine. And I think that UCLA is going to do exactly that.
Yep. One thing to take note of, at the end of their tournament run here in the conference, Dent and Bilodeau were out with some sort of injuries. But I recently heard that Mike Cronin said that he is 100% hopeful and expecting them to play. So I don't think that will be an issue. I see the Bruins to move on to face the winner of the 2 seed and 15 seed UConn versus the Furman Paladins. What are we thinking about this matchup?
Yeah, yeah. Let's just get straight into it. UConn is going to win this game,
Yep.
in my opinion. In my humble opinion. Now I've seen some people on TikTok saying that this game is itching at them. I feel no itch.
No.
Okay, I have faith in this UConn team. That like UConn has had some struggles recently. I think we can all talk about that. If you look at their notable results on ESPN, all of their big wins, their notable wins, are at the beginning of the season.
Correct.
Besides this win against the Johnnies, middle of February or late February, that was just a beatdown. But then, of course, Johnny's got their get back. But I think that this UConn team is too good, too experienced. They know what they're doing. They're not going to lose to Furman.
Completely.
We can talk about them in these other rounds, and I think that's where it's going to show up. But people have talked about how weak this bubble is. I agree. NIL is taking players from teams like Furman, giving them to teams like UConn. It's
Absolutely.
just
Yep.
we're
Bottom line.
leaving the age
Yep.
of these 15, 16 Cinderellas. And I think UConn's going to get it done.
Yep. Completely agree. Um, that means we can begin to look at the round of 32 here. We have Duke versus Ohio State. Um, no matter what we want to say about the winner of Ohio State versus TCU, unfortunately, I think either team, no matter what the outcome is, has officially met their match. I think the Duke Blue Devils are way too consistent and strong of a team. Even down their
Yes.
true point guard, Caleb Foster, and Gungba will be back. I don't think they have any way to lose this game. Obviously, some people might think about it. I don't think the Duke Blue Devils, will face a challenge until the Sweet 16.
And I almost feel boring when it gets to places like this, but just Duke is good at basketball, man.
Absolutely.
Cameron Boozer is good at basketball, man. Like you just have to. I think in cases like this, you have to give Duke their flowers. Ohio State is hot. I don't think this is going to be a beatdown, and it's a struggle in games like this because we talk about it and we're like, oh yeah, Duke here, but I'm not saying it's going to be a beatdown in any ways. I can have full faith that Duke is going to win, and I can have full faith that this is going to be a tough matchup for the Duke Blue Devils.
Totally. Yep. Unfortunately, I just don't like the 8 or 9 upset here. I think we have to stick with our logic and the consistency of 1 seeds and prior chalk tournaments, um, I think we just have to move on to the St. John's and Kansas matchup to
Yeah, I
face
will say
the Duke Blue Devils.
I will say one more thing. You talk about chalk. Duke is the number one team in the country for a reason. I don't
Absolutely.
think that the Caleb Foster injury is going to affect them at this game. I do think
No.
it's going to start to show some cracks. I think this is kind of we might see a little show of why they need Caleb Foster, but in an upset that would be as big as Ohio State beating Duke, you want to look at adjusted pace. These teams play almost the exact same, so I
Yeah.
don't think that the cards are in line for Ohio State,
Yep.
which is why I was so willing to give you that pick over TCU because we know that they are going to have to face Duke.
Exactly. Yeah, totally agree with you there. I feel like whoever wins this next 5-4 matchup between the Johnnies and the Jayhawks do have a very good chance to pull off an
Very
upset
good chance.
against a shattered Duke. Not shattered, definitely not shattered by any means,
Not
but
shattered.
um, yeah. What are we thinking with the Johnnies versus the Jayhawks here?
This, I think, honestly, might be one of the toughest decisions to make in
Mm,
this Eastern bracket. We can talk about the game after this, but this game, I don't know, man. A
it's a
lot of
heater.
teams are choosing the Johnnies to make it out of the East, period, to go and beat Duke after this. And it's my personal belief that Darren Peterson will show up. He has to show up at some point, and I believe that this tournament is where he's going to do that. And I think that he can make a run.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it going both ways. Personally, I will state that I have taken St. John's in this matchup a majority of the time. I feel like the St. John's team under Rick Pitino, is peaking at the correct time, whereas we see a Kansas team that has maybe even been on a little bit of a cold streak to end their season. Obviously, they picked up a win against the TCU Horned Frogs in the conference tournament, but ended up losing big to the Houston Cougars right after that. Um, Personally, looking at some statistics, we see on Evan Maya that the St. John's team is ranked 11th, whereas we get Kansas at the 21st. Um, on Ken Palm, I haven't looked into it. I'll look right now. We have the St. John's team at 17, and Kansas is 21st. Obviously, very close matchup between these two. What do we want to do to break this down, and which way do we want to go here?
Yeah, that is indeed the question. That kind of sounds obvious, but that's a tough question to answer. It's like what do we value the most? A
Yes.
team that has been hot or Kansas who has yet to really prove themselves? I think I think Kansas is underrated and I am actually quite unsure of what caused them to struggle so much this entire season. Like that is just on paper, this Kansas team should be so much better than they are and than they were
Mm-hmm.
throughout the season.
Yeah. Hmm. So
Hmm.
you like
This
Kansas, I like St. John's. What do we want to be the deciding factor to truly break this up? Is there anything specifically we should look at? We could go with Kansas. You gave me Ohio State. I can go with Kansas for you. What do you want to do? I'm good. I'm open with whatever. Um,
it's tough. It's tough.
Looking at the Team Scatter app on College Basketball Analytics, um, two very similar teams with their offensive and defensive rating. The St. John's finds themselves in the upper right quadrant, and the Kansas Jayhawks are not far behind on the left side there. very similar teams. That's probably why we see the St. John's ahead on some of these analytical websites, just based on them being in that upper right quadrant. Shooting percentages, I don't know totally where they stand. Obviously, okay, looking at 2 point, 3 point percentages, they shoot the ball at a very consistent and similar rate. Um, it looks like Kansas shoots the three a little bit better, but the two a little bit worse. It's so similar that it's hard to really base it off of that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And like my pick in Kansas, like it depends so much on the faith that I have that Darren Peterson will show up. If Darren Peterson plays like how he's been playing, you know, and does not show up in this tournament, I think that St. John's can beat Duke, can go on. I think this is one of the turning points in how good people's drafts or
Okay,
brackets will be. And my entire point here relies on that I think Darren Peterson can be the truth, that Darren Peterson can be the difference maker. I think it all relies on the likelihood that Darren Peterson can show up.
okay, I like it. I agree with you. Let's take Kansas and Bill Self to move on to the Sweet 16 to face Duke. But first, before we can get there, we have an interesting matchup of our 11th seed South Florida versus the Michigan State Spartans. Do we want to ride with the Cinderella, or do we trust the consistency of Izzo and March behind his Jeremy Frears and Jackson Kohler to get it done?
And we just go from one very difficult decision to another, and I don't think there's many easy decisions uh, this year around. I really don't think that there is, but this is just one of those ones where I really think it is. There's a lot of similarities between this pick and the last pick that we played. A team like Michigan State, who people know can be good. They have proved themselves in specific games, but they have also dropped into lulls that make you have that little bit of doubt drop in. And then you have a team like USF, who I think is very similar to the trajectory that St. John's has been on, where they have just been hot as of recently. St. John's kind
Mm-hmm.
of started the year not that good and kind of has shot up recently. And USF, I think, has been good all year, but recently has just heated up. So
Totally.
do you think that this team, who can be good, can turn it back around at the right time for the tournament after getting a win under their belt? Or do you think that the team that is hot, that just beat a good team, can continue to be hot?
Um, in my personal opinion, I trust Izzo and March. I feel like he has consistently been able to produce teams that are able to carry themselves onto the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. I don't think we have seen in the history of March Madness a whole lot of Michigan State struggles. I trust the Big Ten here to get it done. And I think just USF's lack of playing high level teams is finally going to catch up to them. Obviously, they don't have any high quality wins past the Utah State Aggies. I just think their lack of competition is going to finally catch up to them, and the Michigan State Spartans are going to take it home.
Yeah, and I have no arguments here. We brought it up earlier. USF really relies on their starters. I think that they will be worn down from Louisville, and I think Michigan State is just going to do that to them again. Michigan State is just so consistent top to bottom. They're well rounded. They're going to pass the ball around. They're going to wear out these starters on defense, and that's I think what you really have to be scared of if you're UCF. Are these starters that you rely on so much, are they going to get worn down on defense? And I
Totally.
think that's what Michigan State's going to do to them. Michigan State plays slightly on the slower side. They're going to wear this team down. They're going to out rebound USF. I I really have no argument against Michigan State. I
Yep.
think that they will get it done here. I think USF will finally reach their wall. They will get worn down too much. And now we have to make the decision of who Michigan State Spartans are going to play in the Sweet 16? Is it going to be UCLA? Is it going to be UConn? Deacon, I want to know your opinion.
Yeah, um, this is a very interesting matchup here between Mike Cronin and Dan Hurley. Obviously, whichever team loses this game will probably be remembered for the press conference after for whatever their coach has to say. Um,
Mm,
Honestly, you can see me picking UCLA in this matchup. I think there is some vulnerability to Danny Hurley's team, but I don't know if they're going to show this vulnerability in the round of 32. The only thing that is holding me back from saying that, obviously, we see UCLA's two top players go down with minor injuries in the Big Ten tournament. Obviously, like I said earlier, they're supposed to be back, but I don't know if they can have what it takes to beat the UConn Huskies head to head in a full blown matchup. I feel like the Huskies are just too consistent of a team, have been known to be a powerhouse in March. I feel like that, yeah, they live up to their name a little bit. Maybe some people will be taking this upset. I don't know if I want to take this upset just with the consistency and obviously they're just known ability to go on runs in March.
hmm And you know me, I like some hot takes. And that's what I like in this scenario is that I think that all metrics should point to UConn, their consistency,
Mm-hmm.
UCLA being banged up, them showing some volatility early in the season. But I think that I do really like UCLA's upside here.
Totally.
I think that that volatility that I just mentioned gives them what it takes to have a run here. I also know that UConn kind of thrives in the tournament being an underdog. You
True.
know, they've been in situations like this before. They've been in situations even being a higher seed and winning the national championship. It does really rely on how healthy the Bruins' best two players are. They've been hot to end this season. They figured it out exactly at the right time. UConn has been struggling a little. Who is going to turn it back around in the tournament? It's the same. It's the same argument we've been having this entire video.
Yep.
Do we trust the team who got hot at the right time, or the team that can win and that the country knows is a good team and is
Yeah.
a tested team?
And I will say that March is all about runs and getting hot. So I honestly don't even hate taking the UCLA Bruins to be our first major upset in this bracket. You can stop me if you want, but I do not hate Donovan Dent and Bildo to carry the Bruins into the Sweet 16 here. Maybe this is the end of UConn's dominance in the March Madness bracket as they get upset in the round of 32. I don't know. How do you feel? Should we take this or not?
So you can't see my screen. You don't know what's been happening, but I've been kind of pre-picking what I think is going to happen. I have some things lined up in my head. I have had UCLA playing Michigan State in the next round this entire time. It's been picked on my computer for a couple minutes now. I have a lot of faith in this upset, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that March is the exact right time to take some hot takes. The odds that you fill out a perfect bracket are close to zero. Nobody's ever done
Yeah.
it. So I think that if
Yep.
you have a feeling about these exact things that are a bracket buster, if you pick it wrong,
You got
it
to
can go
rock with
very
it.
badly.
Yeah.
If you pick it right, it's going to pay off. I think that March is the exact right time that you need to be taking these risks, that you need to be going with this hot takes. I think that we should go UCLA to play the Michigan State Spartans.
I like it. So here we have two very highly anticipated matchups here if these happen in the Sweet 16. Duke versus Kansas. An absolute heater of the stars. Obviously, we
A
have
heater.
two potential top three or even top two draft picks between Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer, two legacy coaches with John Shire and Bill Self. Which team is going to carry themselves into the Elite Eight here?
All metrics point to Duke. We have to
Absolutely.
come right out and say it.
Yep.
Every metric points to Duke. And I think that this, in my humble opinion, comes down to the play at point guard. You know, Aaron Peterson, is he who the NBA thinks he is? Is he what the hype has shown him to be?
Yeah.
Is he what the haters say that he isn't? And then, the Foster injury finally catching up. I think that, in my personal opinion, I really like picking Kansas here. I think Duke's the better team. I think
Yeah.
most times that they play, earlier in the season, if they had played, I think Duke would have crushed Kansas. But
Yeah.
like I was just saying, this is the time to take hot takes. I think that the Duke Ohio State is really going to show some flaws in the game that Duke is. If I think that Duke has almost no flaws. I think that the only one that could possibly be exploited at this time is how they have been adjusting to not having Foster. And I think that the Ohio State game is just going to show a tiny crack that if Darren Peterson decides to not be DNP, I think that
Hmm.
he can throw himself in there and kind of figure out what to do. Kansas is my hot take. My hot take of the entire tournament is that Kansas is a Final Four team, but we have stuff to talk about because how can you pick Kansas over Duke?
Yeah. Obviously, this is not something to tread lightly about. If you almost look at any single analytical website or any metrics, Duke is almost always in the prime position. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of ways you can go about this and look at that as well. Obviously, I'm looking at the team chart on CBB Analytics, and with offensive and defensive efficiency, we see Duke right primed in the top right corner of that, obviously leading all the metrics there. On Evan Maya, you have them at the top. Kempom, you have them at the top. Are they really vulnerable to a Sweet 16 upset here? What are you saying here?
You know, and I think the answer is probably that they're not, you
Mm-hmm.
know, shy away from my own opinion. Uh, Kansas plays a great defense. Obviously Duke does too. They're one of the best in the country at it.
Yep.
But Kansas could have the ability to exploit the fact that they have uh, Cameron Boozer really running the point when Caden's not in. You know, Having no true point guard is, I think, if Bill Self can find a way to uh, disrupt some things in that flow without having Foster in the game, I think that that would be how they would win. Can
Yeah.
they get that done? I want to hear your opinion. I think I think that it is very possible that Kansas
Yeah.
can upset Duke. And obviously, I'm not saying that Duke isn't the better team. Duke is the best team
Absolutely.
probably in this tournament,
Absolutely.
but does Kansas have what it takes to upset them? I think that they do.
Um. Yeah. So I don't hate it one bit. Obviously, respect to all Duke for leading all of these metrics, but I feel like this is one of the reasons that nobody has ever had a perfect bracket, and nobody will want to fade Duke in March, especially this early. I feel like this is a risk I'm fine with taking actually with you here. Um, Obviously, it's could very obviously not pay out right. Kansas has a very tough matchup against hypothetical St. John's. Um, but I do feel like March is all about that guard play and high level guard play. I do like that Darren Peterson does show up. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, he could easily just go off for 30. Um, it's going to be very interesting. They have a good backcourt. They have Trey White with them as well. You have Badunga and you have Melvin Council. So they do have a great
Yeah.
roster with them. I will go with the Kansas Jayhawks onto the Elite Eight.
And I think what makes me personally a little more comfortable taking this is that with the injuries, with just some things looking into Duke, I don't think that they will win the national championship this year,
Hmm.
which makes me that much more comfortable picking them to get upset earlier. Uh,
Yeah,
because I think that the risk versus reward is higher uh, in this scenario. I think that the reward uh, is higher because
true.
I think that Aaron Peterson can show up, and I think that the risk is lower because I don't think Duke can win the national championship and get you all of those points for your bracket.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because Duke is probably going to be the most picked team to win the national title. And like you
Of
said, though,
course.
this is an opportunity. This is a great opportunity to actually make back some of those points if they actually get upset early. Obviously, it's a
Yes.
risk doing it with Kansas. You can do it with St. John's too, however you want to go. But I think we talked about this. We both like Kansas's play style and the odds that guard play can carry them into the Elite Eight. So yeah, I like it. Let's roll with it.
All right, then let's move on to Michigan State versus UCLA, a big Big Ten matchup here. Obviously, you look earlier in the season, you look in the regular season, middle of February, where Michigan State kind of dominates
Yeah,
UCLA, but then you look just last week where UCLA pulls one out against Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament to go face Purdue. And as you wonder which version of each of these teams you are going to see in this Sweet 16 matchup.
yeah. One of the first things that I think about when I look at this matchup is how hard it is to beat a team twice on a neutral floor. We even, for example, we even see that with St. John's and UConn. Um, St. John's actually went 2-1 against UConn in a split there. Um, I do think the Michigan State Spartans are able to pull this one out just based on strictly how hard it is to beat a team twice, especially when these teams are so elitely talented. I think Michigan State comes more well prepared. Obviously, both teams will be hot at this time. Michigan State will have just shut down the Cinderella of South Florida, and UCLA is coming off a big upset over UConn. I think the Cinderella has finally met its match here. I think the Michigan State Spartans will be moving on.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. We look into the stats and stuff less and less as we move on, but I think that's just because uh, these games are not set, you know,
True.
and
So
it's harder to
yes, it's
find
it's harder.
these these head-to-head matchups as we are, you know, going through this on the fly. I think UCLA's injuries, obviously, I think both their players come back.
Yep.
I think that they're healthy to start the tournament, but, coming off an injury that soon, straight into the volatility that is March, I think eventually it does catch up to you. The cracks start to show of these players just not being that that full step as fast as they normally are. And I think that that finally catches up to these teams. It's hard to win in March while injured to any
Totally.
extent.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, analytically, like we could go into the stats here. Obviously, we're gonna find that Michigan State will lead them in almost all the efficiency metrics, especially like offensive and defensive efficiency. You see them 12th on Evan Maya. You see them ninth in Ken Palm. Obviously, UCLA will be lacking into the mid 20s and both of those. And if you look at just the scatter plot, you see Michigan State finding themselves in the midst of that middle quadrant to see this on a graph, with UCLA just below them, hence the mid 20s spot. I think statistically this is the right decision. In our heads, I feel like we kind of both see that this is the right decision as well. I think we both can agree to take the Michigan State Spartans into the Elite Eight to
Yeah.
face the Kansas Jayhawks.
Yeah. I think just UCLA has a slightly better offense than Michigan State, but the injuries are going to catch up. I think you have to look. They play a very similar play style, and you just have to
Mm-hmm.
look at which one does it better. And in this case, that is Michigan
Michigan
State.
State. Yep. Now the matchups of elite coaches continue to find us. Now we have Bill Self versus Izzo. Where do we even begin with such a matchup as this?
Yeah, and you talk about their coaches, and we talked about this uh, just a while ago. How the East is stacked with these names. You know,
Absolutely.
here I think we've talked about the coaches in almost every single matchup. Like these are teams, these are coaches that know how to win, and these are honestly two teams that a lot of people don't have it making out of the East just because of the presence of teams like UConn, teams like St. John's, teams like Duke. But I think
Mm-hmm.
these teams in their prime, in the condition that I'm imagining them in, I think both of these teams have what it takes here, have what it takes to get here, have what it takes to go past. You just look, are we looking for consistency or are we looking for the higher upside? Which, in my opinion, I think their upside is actually pretty similar. Even with Darren Peterson playing at the highest level that he can, I think that they have the higher upside, but I think it's not that much above Michigan State. I think Michigan State is just that much more consistent. They're well rounded.
Mm-hmm.
They can do it. Uh, I think, in my heart of hearts, I have Michigan State coming out here, but I do really want to know what you think because I'm not set on my decision.
Yeah.
I think this is one where we can do some problem solving here to what team is more likely to make it.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. As I kind of dive into this one and begin looking at their rankings specifically, we see that they both have a very similar defensive rank, actually.
Mhm.
We see Kansas at the 11th spot, around there, depending on what website you're looking at, and Michigan State around the 14th spot. That finds itself similar on both Evan Maya and Ken Palm. But I do feel like with the inconsistency and maybe even volatility of Kansas to show up in big games, I feel like I do personally like the Michigan State Spartans to come out with this one. We can look into multiple different things as well. Um, yeah, obviously head to head, statistically on paper, it's hard to say. Obviously, you get a 46 to 54% chance on the ESPN bracket app. Um, yeah, personally, I just feel like I can see Michigan State moving on to the Final Four. I feel like they are a serious contender, and yeah, it's not to take lightly that Kansas would be coming off knocking off this underseeded St. John's and the top of the top Duke team. I feel like they've used all of their power and mustard to get themselves to this position. I feel like the Michigan State Spartans have a way easier route there. Obviously, we can see them facing South Florida and UCLA. I feel like they can kind of cruise to this spot and finally use their full force against Kansas in this game and take it home.
Mhm. And I think looking at play styles, I like Michigan State's a lot more here. Kansas, obviously they have a great defense. They have players like Darren Peterson, like Badunga, like Trey White, who can just go at it. But Michigan
Mm-hmm.
State's defense is also very good. And I think what this is going to come down to is that Michigan State is a phenomenal rebounding team, and Kansas isn't. I think that's what's going to get them.
Okay.
I think that Kansas is going to lose the defensive battle here because as good as their defense is, when they play these harsher or extreme defenses, they start to kind of lose their effort, lose their mustard, as you said. Uh, I think that Michigan State is going to find out how to do it. You know, I think the volatility of Kansas, as you said, March gives, March takes. I think March will give a lot to this Kansas
Totally.
team. But I think coming into this elite game, that Michigan State will finally take from Kansas.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it at all. Um, as you say that about rebounding, I'm looking at the CBB analytics website. I clicked on the suggestions. I went to rebounding, defensive rebound percentage, and offensive rebound percentage. It does it for you. We see Michigan State on that far right upper quadrant, actually, whereas Kansas even sees themselves in that bottom left. So I do feel like that does play a
Yeah.
big role. Obviously, Michigan State has a great ability to rebound defensively. Obviously, you see Duke in that middle right region as well, but the shot making with Darren Peterson and Kansas, obviously, upsets happen. That's March. Um, it's not like it can't happen just based on rebounding statistics. I do like Michigan State to be our first team into the Final Four.
Yeah. And I think teams' abilities to get hot really matters early. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously that's going to shape what happens down the line once you get to this point. Which of these teams is consistent? Which of these teams is all around? Which one of these teams is deep enough? What which of these teams is healthy enough? That's going to really come into
Totally.
play once you get to these Elite 8 games that you have played the best of the best up to this point. Are you still are you still juiced up enough to come out and play these games? And I think that Kansas will have lost that steam by this point.
I completely agree. I feel like they're forced to use a lot more of their abilities in these um, 2 rounds prior. I just, yeah, I just see a lot of ways that Michigan State can come out from this East region. I like how we've picked this East region, and yeah, I'm pretty confident that this could be a pretty solid lineup come these next few days.
Yeah. I have nothing else to say. I think you've said it all, and I think you should say the last couple words.
Okay, perfect. So this is our East region. This is our full analysis of the East region. Obviously, we broke down each of the matchups, how we feel about each team. Yeah, West region coming next. So we will see you on the next one. Peace out.